I would like to think that you flew into town just for today and just for us. I know it didn't work out exactly that way, but something we're really passionate about on this podcast, A Million Ways to Make $1,000,000, would be to have in-person interviews.
Mhm.
Like, that's just a non-negotiable. I don't want to do anything remote or on the computer, and so I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
You and I connected just over 3 years, or right around 3 years ago now. It was right when you had the exit of your company,
Mhm.
and you're on to the next phase of life. And I look forward to asking you a little bit more about that today,
Yep.
on why you chose to roll right into the next chapter rather than hang out and go on vacation for a while or whatever that may be. And
There was a little vacation in there, but
well, I imagine. Well, we're grateful to have you. We have Garret Larson with us today, and I'm excited to talk about this because one of our goals on this podcast is to give people as many different experiences as we can on how to generate wealth.
Mhm.
And we use that benchmark, or 1,000,000 ways to make $1,000,000. I want to find as many different ways that people have found that type of success or reached that benchmark in as many different fields possible. And today you have one of the most fun, stereotypical industries that we could have.
Yeah.
And you've rolled with it. You've got your own podcast. It's called Trash Talk.
Yep.
And I just think of, these elementary school, what you might call like a dig or a knock, and someone might say, oh, they're going to work at McDonald's when they grow up, or they're going to be what?
Be a trash man.
You're going to be a trash man, and they're just the two that come to mind when I think about those, what could be considered negative stereotypes for someone that they think isn't going to be up to much later on in life.
Sure.
Oh, they're going to go work at McDonald's. Oh, they'll probably be a trash guy, or that's their only option. And I'm excited to debunk that. And I hope that people see the opportunity in the service space, in this. If you're willing to get your hands dirty, if you're willing to work, you might even call it old school, just like, and more importantly, who you are in that and who you're being in it, and, finding an opportunity, because I think that there are opportunities right in front of people.
Yeah.
I go back to a scenario. I owned a flooring company for a little while.
Okay.
And I would look to recruit young people that were maybe dueling, they spoke Spanish or something like that and English, and said, hey, listen, what's your plan? Oh, I don't know. I don't think college is for me. It's like, great. Do you want to come learn flooring? Come work for me for 2 years. You'll do 6 months in carpet and 6 months in tile and 6 months in wood, and you're going to learn all of the types of flooring, and then we'll show you how to run your own crews.
Yeah.
And we paid one of our, crews, or one of our lead guys, $600,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't talk people into doing it.
Holy cow.
I feel like I could sell a lot, and I couldn't talk these young kids into come and learn. They would just get caught up in that 2 years of learning this trade. It's like, man, it's the same as community college or something. Like, come and do this. So I get passionate about somebody that was willing to go into what we'll call an unglamorous, from the sounds of it, space. But fill us in a little bit around where you're from. Like, we're Arizona guys. You no longer live in Arizona, but take us back a little bit and just give us a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, and what early life was for you.
Yeah, sure. So one note I want to make, though, on what you said, though, real quick, because I'm really super passionate. I was before, but as kids tend to do, like, they'll even make things more passionate about things. Where you said something like you're talking about, oh, you're not going to grow up to be much. You'll be a garbage man or work at McDonald's. I've had an experience with my oldest son that his mind doesn't really work the same as a lot of people do. All right, so he took a lot longer to learn how to talk. He's incredibly smart in a lot of ways. The dude reads chapter books better than I do at age 8, and but we have to practice tying his shoes every night because we're working on that for months, get it done. And I've really recognized that, these things can actually be your superpower. And that's what made me think of when you said that, like, hey, this unglamorous stuff, whether you're going in to learn a trade with carpets, being a trash man, gonna wash windows, whatever it is, like if you change your mindset around that, instead of being like, oh, this is a hurdle, or I got to get out of this, I got to look, like you can change everyone's perception about that, where it turns into your superpower. And so anyway, that just made me think of my son when you said that, because that's one thing I've just noticed about him as I'm watching him grow up, is like there's so many different routes you can take where, yeah, if you go into finance, that sounds sexy and cool and everyone wants to do that, and you'd have no problem getting guys to come in and make 30 grand a year for 5 years before they finally make 130, and you're offering something where it's like, hey, come make 60 grand a year and then make 600. And because they've got a weird perception around that, if guys will learn how to take that and turn that into their superpower, man, it's limitless. So,
Yeah.
I'll jump in. Yeah, I grew up a snowflake boy. Snowflake's just a small town in northern Arizona, and it was typical small town. My parents actually grew up across the street from each other, so and we lived like a block away. So I had both my grandparents a block away, and my dad grew up just business after business after business. He started in trucking, and my grandpa had a molding mill, so he trucked mainly molding for my grandpa, but he had other contracts. And my grandpa also had a trash company. It was called Snowflake Sanitation. He had started that in the 50s as kind of like a side project. He was the first one to even start the idea in town of like, I'll come to your house and I will pick up your trash for $5 a month and take it to the dump, where back then everyone just took their trash to the dump. And so he had that going, and it was kind of a side business for him. He had his molding mill that was growing and really big. And so my dad, as he was trucking, he also was managing that company for my grandpa. And so that was really cool. I grew up in kind of this entrepreneur ecosystem where my grandpa had a number of businesses, my dad had a number of businesses. And then eventually my wife's grandpa was also in trucking, and through auctions or someone owing money, he ended up with a roll-off truck. Those are the big dumpsters that go to like construction sites. And he knew my dad and, liked my dad, and was like, hey, why don't you take this roll-off truck, pay me when you can, see if you can make anything out of it. So my dad added that onto his plate of managing Snowflake Sanitation, running Larson Trucking, and Larson Waste was born. So that was, I loved that growing up. I remember I'd come home from preschool, and usually I could catch my dad on his second trip down to the valley, right when I got home from preschool. So I'd hop in the truck with him, and we'd drive down, and then we'd get back, and I'd go have dinner and go to bed. He'd have dinner and hop in the roll-off truck, run the roll-off truck till midnight or so, and then be back up at 3, 4 a.m. to hop back in his truck and do his first load down to Phoenix and back.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool growing up, just seeing great work ethic, seeing guys work to build something for themselves and their family. And so the idea of like going to work for anyone was never even in my, like, I didn't even understand that people did it. And so that was really cool growing up. And
tell me, like, what's that route? So what I heard in that was that the dump or wherever he had to unload the trash from up there wasn't nearby.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So I'll clarify a little bit. So when he was trucking, the molding for my grandpa's business would go from Snowflake, where he had his molding mill, to his distribution centers. He had one here and one in Salt Lake.
So that's a hour and a half to 2 hour.
It's about a 3-hour trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 6-hour turnaround. And so, yeah, my dad would get up first thing in the morning, take the first load of molding down to the wholesale place down here in Phoenix, drop that off, pick up another load, come back. Lots of times he would then make a second run and come back. And then after dinner, hop in and do whatever you need to do for the roll-off work.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the math on that. I mean, those are longer days.
They are. Yeah, if you asked him, he lived off of Coke and sunflower seeds. It's funny. You see truckers now, a lot of them are 300 pounds, really big. I grew up seeing truckers that were toothpicks because they ran like crazy. It was a different time too. Now, if you're trucking, I mean, you can't go past 12 hours. They'll stop you. But back then it was a wild, wild west.
If you want to drive, go ahead.
Go 3 days straight. If you've got work to do, no one's going to stop you. And so, yeah, eventually he did that for a long time, started hiring employees at the different ones. And then eventually he bought out Snowflake Sanitation from my grandpa and turned it into Larson, merged it with Larson Waste. And over time that became the bigger business. And there's kind of 3 stages in the trash business. There's haulers, and then there's haulers with transfer stations. There's haulers with transfer stations and landfills. Once you get the landfill, you build a landfill, that's usually like, that's going to be good for 300 to 500 years.
Wow.
Is generally what you built that for. So once you get a landfill, you're either around for really forever or you're going to go public. You've kind of made it totally established. And so eventually he got to the point where he had a transfer station. And at that point, all his trucking just went to service the waste company.
And is there the equivalent of commercial and residential trash?
There is, yeah.
So, because when I heard that your grandpa, it sounded like that would be like a residential service that he had. But it sounds like your dad did a little bit more of like the commercial side of things, like a construction site or something like that.
Yeah, the revenue streams, there's a number of them. You've got residential, you've got commercial, you've got construction or temporary, you've got medical, and you've got hazardous. That's kind of the umbrella of all waste.
Okay.
And so, yeah, my grandpa was doing the residential and commercial.
That would be bulk pickup and or like back in the 50s would have been like your actual trash.
Yes.
Like your daily, similar to what like valet trash in apartments might be today.
Yeah, somewhat, but it was curbside, actually picking it up into the truck and transporting it either to the transfer station or the landfill.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, my grandpa had kind of the 2 streams of the residential and the commercial. My dad had Larson Way started with the roll-off or the temporary ones. And then over time we added the medical, the hazardous, and actually another one I left out was shredding. We started that right after we sold. So
they had a buddy that ran like a shredding route for a shredding company. I was like, man, yeah, there's a million ways to make $1 million bucks. Like right. People need their stuff shredded and picked up and disturbed, like, geez.
Yeah, I love the premise of your podcast with that, because really if anyone wants to do anything, go off on their own, like the only struggle should be there's an endless amount of vehicles that I want to, that I could use. Which one do I choose? Because not only is there all these established ones, there's a million other ones that aren't made. Like you mentioned valet trash, like that's relatively new. That didn't exist 15 years ago.
Wow.
And another service, this was an add-on service we had, but they're standalone companies that do it, is someone decided, I'm going to start a company where I just pull the trash cans from the house to the road. After the company comes and dumps it, I'll take it back to the house. Another one that's gotten really big as of late too is cleaning the trash cans. I'll get a trailer that cleans trash cans. So in that one little industry of waste management, we're seeing in the past 10, 15 years, whole new businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses pop up that didn't exist. They're just added on services. People are finding huge value in. And so, yeah, I think you mentioned valet trash. I had a guy reach out to me saying, hey, I like these valet trash things at apartment complexes. What do you think if we start approaching universities and doing this in dorm rooms? And so it really is endless inside an industry, everything you could do. And so you start looking at the whole market, and it's crazy. I'm probably going off on this a little bit too long, but we really focused on hospitals. That was part of why we got into the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
because one thing I want to do is I want to be able to approach hospitals and offer them a contract that no one but us could bid. And so that meant, hey, we can handle your roll-off services, we can handle your commercial services, we can handle your medical waste services, we can handle your shredding, we can handle your hazardous trash, and we can handle the training of your staff. Because in these different waste streams, there's all sorts of regulations and different things like that where we identified a problem that hospitals have high turnover on house cleaners, and there's high regulation on how certain types of waste are managed.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're having a high turnover. We can't keep everyone certified. We can't do these things. And so, yeah, I know I'm kind of ranting on this.
Yeah.
But it's incredible the endless opportunities that there are to provide true value to companies that they're not only like willing to pay for, but excited that you brought them a solution. And then there's ways to do it where I think it's called blue water concept or something. I've heard that phrase somewhere where you're doing it in a way where no one else is doing it. So you're no longer bidding against people. You're a unique service that you're the only one that can do that.
Yeah.
So, that's, that I think kind of came from telling my story of my dad and having all these businesses. So
let me see if I can dissect it a little bit.
Yeah.
So now we're coming up on third generation trash, so to speak. Is that fair to say? Can I just call the industry trash? We like trash talk.
Yep,
right?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Okay. And is there a point where you're saying, this is my line? Like, I'm going into the family business. This is great. Like, me and my dad are thick as thieves. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, and that was a distraction from normal school or anything like that. Like, what kind of student were you growing up? Like, was it like, hey, I'm going to start my own business, I don't need school? Or how'd you do in the classroom?
Yeah. So in the classroom, I always had good enough grades so I got to play on Friday night.
Okay.
That was my focus with the classrooms. But it wasn't great. Like, I have a distinct memory, and this was like at the end of high school. I was a senior, where it was a situation where you got to like write your name on the board to read from some novel that we were reading. And you got some extra credit. And so I was like, I'm never not going to take any chance I have to get extra credit, because I'm going to bomb the test. So I just got to go into the test with the highest scores I can going into the test, because I know I'm going to bomb that. And the first day that happened, I went up there, I wrote the name on the board, and I remember Mrs. Nancy was like, hey, Garret, it's okay. I'll give you the extra credit, but you don't have to read. And so that little story, I think, gives you an idea of how well I did in the classroom. Yeah. That wasn't great, but I do have to say, I don't know how young your audience goes. I had zero interest in Huck Finn or those type of books. Now I got a lot more interest in like classic literature and things like that. But as a kid growing up and a high school kid, I was just like, I hate reading. I don't want to do this. After I served my mission, the first book that I realized you actually can learn stuff from books was Leadership and Self-Deception. I had read that and my mind was blown. And I was like, I didn't understand that you can gain knowledge from books. And as simple as that sounds, but so if you're a young kid that hates reading, try reading something that helps you, because that might change your perception. Because since then, like, I've consistently read at least 50 books a year since reading that book. 50 is and I say read, but listen to, is my minimum standard for a year. I want to get through 50, and I've gotten to the point where there's probably 5 to a dozen that are going to happen every year. I'm going to revisit, but so just to know on the classroom, if any young people hate that, try a different genre, because I thought I hated reading. Now
we can't go on. Give me 1 to 3.
1 to 3.
Yeah, that are like the staples for you that you've really enjoyed.
Yeah, so I love Outwitting the Devil. That's one that I think can really change everything for.
Is that in the discipline sector of around like what's the premise of that?
Yeah. So, well, the premise might sound a little wacky, but the author, gives an example as if he summoned the devil and has an interview with the devil, and ends up asking him like, "Hey, what do you do?" And he is telling him that basically his purpose isn't to necessarily get people to do evil things, but his thing is he wants to get people not to be living up to all that they could be.
Mm.
And so he goes through the tactics that he uses to get people off track of where they could be, and that his main tool is fear and doubt. And so as he gives the tools that he uses, the author asks, well, what's the antidote to that? How do people stop that? And so he goes through and he has to say, the devil in this interview is compelled to tell him, well, if a person does this, then I've got no power over him. If a person does that, I've got no power over him. And I just think it's a fantastic book. And it's one of those books that took me a long time to find. And I was shocked. I was like, I don't know why this isn't like one of those that's screamed at the top. And then the other two that I would say is at the very top of my list is Richest Man in Babylon. I love revisiting that. I think everyone knows
My
that.
wife will read it probably, once a year, once every other year.
Yeah. And then The Excellent Dividend. I think Tom Peters is it's almost like reading an encyclopedia or a dictionary, but it is probably my most marked up and kind of referred to book, because I just feel like any situation I have, I can go back to that book. And if you've ever listened or read to it, it's like, he opens up the section. It's like, this is what we're going to talk about, section 16.1.3. Like it's so well organized and so comprehensive, that it's like using ChatGPT, with any problem you might have on the business. And so I would say those three are very top of my list.
We got to go find Miss Nancy. Hey, listen, she wasn't going to let you read. Like, hey, it's fine. You don't have to read this. You're now consuming 50 books a year. That's pretty great. That says a lot about you. Let's jump back into earlier days, because I just think that there's something special about a family business.
Mm-hmm.
And what I feel is more common than not today is that if the family business isn't quote unquote glamorous, this generation isn't as interested in taking it over.
Yeah.
Or participating in it, or simply working for, the family business. Like, tell me a little bit about how you viewed this now opportunity to continue on the third generation in the trash space, and what was your mindset around those plans? Was it, I'm all in? Was this your dad talking you into it?
Yeah.
Tell me what you thought about that.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a process. So growing up, I didn't care too much to work in his businesses. I liked to start my own. So I was doing car detailing, things like that from, age 12 through high school. And I would try to do businesses that could attach to his. Like I did a business where I washed all his trash cans, washed all his trucks on a monthly basis, stuff like that.
Why?
Why did
Like, he's already got a functioning business. Was there like a sense of pride? Like, no, I want to do my own thing. Am I overthinking that?
Yeah. It's kind of funny because growing up, a lot of times my dad would be like, hey, I don't want you guys to be in this. It's a lot of capital expenditure. It's a lot of stress. Just telling the story that I told there, I think you can probably tell my dad's really a hands-on guy. So, which I think is fantastic. And he grew the business to an awesome level being that way, where it's like everything runs through me. I understand everything. I'm the expert at everything here at this business. And so for me, it was kind of just like, oh man, I like this stuff, but I don't really care to know up, down, backwards, everything about all of this. And then, like I said, yeah, he kind of discouraged it. He was like, hey, this business is, I think there's better vehicles out there. And
Do you think he was speaking from like a work-life balance? Was he like, what was he trying to protect you from?
yeah, I think more than anything, and I need to ask him this, but I think more than anything, it was kind of a subconscious thing of him not wanting to pressure us into it. I think it was more like, you guys go do awesome and incredible things, have a better life than what I've had. Not that he didn't enjoy his life, but he's like, hey, I think there's opportunities out there. And him getting into it, he was planning on dental or medical school or some, kind of that route. And my dad's a very like typically smart guy, like he would breeze through school and breeze through medical school. And, he wouldn't have had a problem with that at all. But when him and my mom got pregnant with my oldest brother right when they got married.
Okay.
And then there was a lot of complications and stuff with my brother's birth, and he had surgeries and things like that. So, and the medical system was everything was just a little bit different in the late 80s, early 90s, right? So for him, it was like, oh, I've now got $20,000 in medical bills. I just got to get to work so I can pay off these medical bills. And so he was like, I'm not going to school. I'm going to go trade my time for money is a language I would use now, but I don't know if that was really in the normal language, but he's like, what I know how to do is trade my time for money. So I'm going to go trade my time for money. And the highest, I can trade my time for money is to own the business or essentially own my job. And so he went and owned his jobs as much as he could, using every hour of every day. And so I think he had a real sense of like, I know there's ways better to do this, that I would rather my kids be able to go in and do something different. So,
but all you know is this entrepreneurial kind of start your own business.
Yeah.
And so he's pushing you out a little bit away, from the trash space.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, well, all right, if you don't want me directly in it, how could I get around it?
Yeah, exactly. And growing up, like he definitely, I remember as a little kid running around and delivering carts and doing stuff with him, and then, would pay us for jobs out there, picking up rocks at the yard and paying us with ice cream cones and things like that. So, but then once we got into sports too, that was something that was really awesome growing up. He was like, go play your sports, go have fun. And it was kind of like, I was like, hey, I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to have a business because I like having money to spend. And I've just always been, I just really enjoy working.
Yeah.
I found a lot of joy in that. And so
what were some of the complementary businesses or business that you had?
So it started off with cleaning his trash cans. So this was before there was auxiliary businesses and fancy trailers that picked it up. So what we get is just a pressure washer. They're called steam cleaners, a pressure washer that also gets the water really hot. And, there wasn't very many people that wanted to clean the trash cans because it's a really dirty job. And it wasn't like these trailers tip it up and it comes down clean. You stuck your head in there and you sprayed it until it was spotless clean. So I started doing that, and he'd pay me $5 a trash can. So I just...
How old?
Probably 11 or 12.
Okay.
And so I had started doing that, and I got into then detailing cars. And he had done that at one point too. And so that started, he had an old sign in one of our barns that was like Larson Detailing. And so one summer day, I found that and I was like, awesome, I got a detail business now. And I went and threw that up on the corner. And he calls me, he's like, dude, I'm getting calls did you put that sign up? Because I'm getting calls like, hey, are you detailing cars again? Are you like, great. And he's like, all right, well, just call my house and tell my wife you're looking for Garret. And so started doing that. And then after doing that a little bit, and I was probably more like 14 or 15, I found out he was paying someone to wash all the trucks once a month. And I was like, hey, if someone's doing that, I want to be the one doing that. So I got a couple buddies and kind of formed the business of washing the trucks, and that was a really exciting. I always have loved trucks. Like I've never grown out of that. I'm still like a toddler that just loves trucks. So that was awesome because that gave me a chance. We'd go out there on Saturday mornings when all the trucks were in there and no one else was at the yard, so I could go hop in the truck and figure out how you start it, figure out how you release the brakes, drive it over to where we were washing it. And it was like, there's probably quite a few things I messed up learning that, but I wasn't very good growing up being told how something gets done. I had to like just get in and do it. So throughout high school, that was basically what I had done in the business. And loved that. As I graduated, I went and played a semester of college ball and went on a mission. And I had no idea what I was going to do when I got back. But I did have one experience on my mission that started to give me a sense of that I'd be connected to that in some way, because we were teaching a family and they were having marital issues, and we were talking about happiness and what brings happiness and joy. And I remember after we had spent that evening with that family, I'd gone home, and that night I'd had a dream. And in that dream, I was at Larson Waste working, and I was just with my dad, my uncle, my grandpa, and we were just working. I just woke up with the strong impression that work will make you happy. And so I started to have this like kind of inclination and draw to that business. But when I got off my mission, living in Snowflake just didn't seem like a viable thing. And I didn't really know where my dad's business was at. He was actually living in Queen Creek now at the time, and he would go spend a couple days up in Snowflake, then back down here. And so I went off and I did the door-to-door thing for a while, and worked in a pool business, and just did kind of explored a little bit for a year or two. And then what brought me back in was him and my mom decided that they were going to go on a mission. And so my dad was like, hey, what do you...
For anyone listening that doesn't get that,
Yeah.
they're saying, hey, I'm going to leave home and I'm going to go leave for what's typically 18 months to 3 years and go and share my belief system in some other part of the world.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you're clarifying that for people. So at that time, he started having discussions with me like, hey, would you maybe move up there? And really, I just want you to just be there so, nothing crazy happens. I trust the people I got there, but keep an eye that no one's stealing money from us, anything like that. And so that was the plan, and that was maybe a month or two before he left on his mission. So, and that was a really fun time because I spent a month or two just shadowing him.
Yeah.
And so that
well, it's a testament to the business. Like if it's running enough and generating enough income for you to go and step away for, years.
Yeah.
And like that's great. He's built something great at that point. And now this opportunity comes in for you to be a part of it. So the mindset has shifted a little bit from, I don't know if I want you involved in this, to now, hey, it'd be great if you could oversee this, but not grow it, not ruin it, right? Like all that stuff, right? It was just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was, it wasn't like we had it super clear, but I was like, okay, we're going to do that. And then, I don't remember the exact time frame, but my recollection, it was just a couple weeks before he took off. It was like, hey, I feel like you need to step in and like run this company. I want you to like actually be over this. And, he had a couple managers at that time, and it's kind of like, oh shoot, like I don't really even know what that means in my business experience. Was like I was not up to par to step into that role of that size of a company, but he had a strong impression that that's what you need to do. And so he did that, and it was a really particular experience doing that. So he told the people there at the company, hey, yeah, like Garrett's in charge, like treat Garrett as if he was me. He's got power of attorney, and really, like, I'm going to focus on this mission. So I don't want to get a phone call. I don't want to hear anything about this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go be a missionary. I don't want to be a remote worker for this and have this clog up my mind. I want to be focused on what I'm going to do. So
Can I pick at you a little bit around this?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's two sides of this. I think that there's one side where someone is looking at, oh, well, mighty lucky.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
nice for you. Like, what a great gift this is. Like, it must have been so easy for you just to get handed the keys. And I think there's plenty of other people in the scenario that shy away from it because they feel what you said you were feeling. Incompetent. I don't know if I'm the right guy. Like my dad, oftentimes we look up to our fathers and think, hey, how am I going to fill those shoes? Like,
yeah,
can you tell us through like your mindset? Like, because what I hear in that is, I love that. I would love to build something that my son could look excited to step into and then bring his skill sets to it and
yeah,
keep it going and those kind of things. But man, I feel like there could be this negative, just chatter around this stereotype of it. And I think, man, I think if everyone peeled it back a little bit, I think that most people would love that.
yeah.
And I would have loved to have built something with my family name on it or anything. Like, take me through, like, did you ever want to turn it down? Were you all in?
Yeah. So yes.
Did you feel obligated?
Yeah, felt obligated for sure. And
So that can make Thanksgiving a little weird,
yeah, yeah. And there was definitely a sense of like, yeah, I get why people would be like, yeah, I wish I had a family. Like, rule number one, if you've got a family business to take that over. And I think the pressure and the stress, if it wouldn't have been the family business, would have been exponentially less. If like it really felt like a big weight put on my shoulders, where I was like, I don't like, I've got the possibility now to destroy what my grandpa, my dad have built, and I don't know if I'm competent to manage this and run this. Like, it was very intimidating. And but I'd had some experiences also growing up and being in a small town, some of the dynamics of that, where it gave me a chance to kind of get past also kind of feeling like, I'll never be able to make my own thing. Because I remember distinctly when I was young being at my orthodontist and him saying something like, some to the effect of like, oh, well, some people just marry the right people and get everything handed to them, and referring to my dad. And I remember growing up hearing those type of comments, and it was like, yeah, I bet you go home at 5 p.m. and watch TV till 10 p.m. And during that time, my dad's day's just getting started. So luck has a lot less to do with it than you think. That being said, it also is like obviously an incredible opportunity to step into something that to really stand on the shoulders of those that came before you. Because I feel very strongly about that. Like I don't know where I would be if my dad hadn't produced this opportunity for me. So I'm really aware of that. But then on the flip side of it, I think you can not appreciate or be worried about how other people might perceive it, because it's, oh, hey, I got this hand to me. And so, day he was gone, I had no idea. I did not know what to do. It wasn't like there was any sort of playbook. And I remember just going, I don't know what to do, but I know, like, if I'm the first one here and last one to leave, like, that will be something. And so I remember I'd go up into my office and I wouldn't know what to do. Sometimes I was literally just sitting there like, I don't know what to do, but I'll be here till the last person's gone. And, a lot of times I was out too, and I'd just do, things that were not worth the time of what I was, now I'd be like, yeah, to organize that and have that handled, but I'll just go do it myself. I'll just go do it. Like, I don't know where to start, but I'm just going to go be productive. And so I started doing that. I was like, I know how to sell. I've done door to door. And so I'm just going to start calling businesses. I'm going to start calling potential people. And so that it kind of just started to roll in some things. And then, I was given reports like profit and loss and balance sheets. So I'm like, I don't know what any of this is. So I ordered off eBay, Accounting 101, and I went through that book and did all the, exercises that it has. And I was like, okay, I understand a balance sheet and financial statements. And it kind of just rolled into this thing where, 6 months in, I was like, okay, I can kind of see what I can do here. And I can see how to grow this business. I'm now understanding and seeing new opportunities. So it was probably 6 months in where it was like, okay, I'm really gonna dive into this. And by that time I'd gotten into books and gotten into things, and I'm like, we've never spent a penny on marketing. Like, let's get to the business of marketing this. And we've never spent a penny on sales. Like, let's build out sales, and let's get into these new things. So things start to really kind of roll, and we saw some exponential growth. And then one thing that did happen too, right before he had left, there was an acquisition that had gone through of another waste company that was maybe a third of our size. That happened like probably couple months before he left. So there was all sorts of dynamics that was like a baptism by fire of now learning how to merge a company into another company, and that old owner working for us. And, it was a great opportunity to learn how to do push-ups by doing push-ups, instead of reading about it. And, which was great for me because that's how I learn. One thing that stands out to me is like, I've never had an employee, so I'd never fired anybody. And I remember the first firing I did, it was absolutely horrific. Because anyone that has ever had to fire anyone, they know it's not like you might see in movies where it's like, big boss doesn't care or whatever. I lost probably a week of sleep, kept putting it off. Then when the employee came in, I didn't know how to act, so I was just acting, hey, how you doing? How's things going? It lasted probably 2 hours. It's like it turned into a negotiation. And so it was just like, what I'm trying to illustrate is every aspect of the business. I didn't know how to do any of it, and it was all learn as we go. And so anyway, fast forward, as he was starting to get to his time to come back, what I realized is like, hey, I really,
How long?
I think they'd extended once, and it was just over a year and a half.
Okay.
And so it had some substantial growth. And with that acquisition, the business was just really a completely different business than, what it had been, just from employees. I mean, I remember one thing we had to navigate is, there was the healthcare law that had been passed that once you get over 50 employees, you have to provide a healthcare. And that, like, even something, it seems small to me now, but that was like the scariest thing. I'm like, if we have to provide a healthcare option, is that gonna bankrupt us? Like, I don't know. Like, and so, and that's to illustrate of like the business was in a completely different stage than it had been a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we, as he was getting closer to coming back, what I was clear on is I wanted to stay on and I want to continue, but it would only, I was very concerned about mine and my dad's relationship if it was a situation where he stepped back in and I was some sort of figurehead CEO. So after, when he got back, we met in the office, and, I had reports set up, and cause we did what he said, where he's like, I don't want to hear anything about it. I'm focused on my mission. So, a couple days after he got back, we sat down in the office, and I said, hey, here's the reports. Here's what the business was doing. Here's what we're doing now. A lot of things are different. Here's what's different. Here's what's different. And where I'm at, Dad, is I absolutely want to continue to do this. And I think we can grow this exponentially. But it's got to operate for me exactly how it has these last 18 months. You can have all the insights to reports you want, all of this, but it doesn't matter if I'm going to go spend $300,000 on a truck. Doesn't matter if I'm going to fire our top guy here. It's only going to work for me if I've still got the keys. And if that doesn't work for you, I'm totally fine with that. This is your business. I'm totally good with that. If you want to step in and, right where you were, that's great for me too. And there's going to be no hard feelings. But what I don't want is we go unclear, and it makes a really messy relationship. So, he took a week or so, and then was like, you know what? No, keep doing what you're doing. And, that wasn't perfectly clean. We, had our ups and downs, and it was just a completely different business. My dad would walk through the shop, and say, hey, I just saw a mechanic throw away a valve stem on a tire. I used to save all those, and we could reuse them on a truck. I'm like, Dad, the last thing I'm concerned about right now is the 25-cent valve stem. And so I give that as the nature of hey, we were in a different business. We were doing different things, and we were still experiencing some really good growth. And so there was kind of ups and downs where sometimes we'd maybe bump heads a little bit, but it was navigated. There was a couple of times where I had to tell him, Dad, please don't talk to any of the employees. You don't understand the impact you have. A lot of times he really enjoyed, if we needed a part from down here in Phoenix and he lived down here, he'd run, go pick up the engine we needed and run it back. And I'm like, Dad, you walk in through the yard, you have no idea the impact you had on the driver when you told him that. So I just say it where it wasn't perfectly clean, but it was a really good manageable thing.
At that point, do you have to go create a new operating agreement around the structure and the future of the business, or did you guys already have that squared away for what your opportunity was in stepping into it when you left?
So we did not have that at all stepping into when we left. One of the things I was really nervous about, and this is just kind of a funny thing. It wasn't a big thing, but it was a funny thing. Kind of illustrates what can happen in family businesses. Doing door to door, I was usually making just over $100K and a year. And when he was like, hey, come up here, yada yada, he's like, hey, yeah, I'll pay you $60K. And I remember we were at the MTC dropping him off, and my mom's like, oh, I heard how much Dad's going to pay you. That's awesome. And I'm just kind of laughing to myself. I'm like, I'm taking a pay decrease to come do this. And so, that's, whatever. That's a little bit weird, but what? And so there was a couple things where I'd given myself pay raises as things have gone. So that was probably the most nervous thing I was about, when we sat down. I was like, hey, I'm making $120K. But it totally, let me show you, it totally makes sense. Look at where a profit is, but, so no, we didn't have anything lined up, that way. And so we began negotiations of actually, a buyout. And, I'll fast forward a little bit, because it's relevant to that. There was a number of, moves we were making, mainly around a landfill. We still hadn't had a landfill, but I was working on getting one permitted and getting us that. But I wanted to get the business bought first, because I could recognize it was kind of a funny situation, right? Where it's your dad on the other side, where I want the best for him, but at the same time, I'm going, every year that I'm growing this business, I'm making me getting into this business more expensive. And So like, we've got to figure this out and navigate it. And so anyway, we'd come to a number of buyout, and I want to say he was keeping a percentage, but I was going to become the majority owner and purchase him out and do that. And we were actually 2 weeks away from closing, and that landfill permit had gone through, and one of our competitors was fighting really hard for that not to happen. And once that happened, they gave us a phone call and had decided it'd be better for them to just buy us out instead of let that landfill go in. And so their offer was a lot more attractive than what we had worked out, which was a fair price for the company, but that permit going through gave our competitors a completely different valuation of what the company would be worth to them if that happens or doesn't happen. And so then even at that point, there was a lot of negotiation of figuring out like, hey, I felt like I deserve a portion of this buyout. And so, all that to say, no, that side of things. And that's one thing I would just say to anyone going into family business is it's most important in family businesses to get ahead of those things and get those contracts lined up and clean, because there was even stuff from my dad and my grandpa when he bought them out 15 years prior that was still lingering, unclear.
So give us some intangibles around that conversation.
Yeah.
How would you, if you had a redo over, and I'm not saying that that's what you said, is that you wish you had a redo, but rewind to the very beginning. How would you have done that today? Yeah.
So the very beginning, I don't know if I would have done anything different at that point, because it really was an opportunity somewhat, hey, I'm going to push you in the deep end, see if you sink or swim, but also a really golden opportunity, because it's like, hey, if you swim, there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and I trust that you're going to swim, and that's why I'm doing this. Yeah. And so at that point, I don't think there was much that if would have been to work out there. Now that conversation I had where I said, hey, I'm going to stay on here, that's where at that point I wish I would have got, because I had ideas of what I wanted and different things like that, but it was kind of like, one thing at a time. And if I would redo that, where at that conversation where I said, hey, if I'm going to stay, either I stay on and I'm 100% in charge, or you come and be 100% in charge and I'll leave. At that point is when I wish there would have been a really tangible conversation.
Okay.
I'm saying, hey, listen, the last 2 years, like, you got someone that ended up growing the company and grew your asset for you at a really low cost. I'm super happy with that. Very excited. Great opportunity for me. Win-win. Now, moving forward, I want to be compensated as anyone in the market would be compensated to continue to do this. And that looks like both pay and equity. And so at that point, I wish I would have had that conversation, but it got to a point where it was like, I think this is the danger of family businesses, is no one wants to really offend anyone. No one wants to make Thanksgiving dinner or Sunday afternoon dinners weird. But the only thing that makes it weird is not being clear of what you would want. And so it kind of goes back to that first salary. Like my dad and my mom's experience, it's like, yeah, we're giving him this opportunity. We're hooking him up with a great salary. And I'm over here like, well, I'm kind of doing you a favor taking a pay cut and come doing this. And so I guess I would say, I'll take back what I said in the beginning of that. I think I could have accepted that and been a lot clearer, like, hey, that's awesome and thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. And I want to be really clear. This is a pay cut for me, and which is great. And I'm fine. I'm honored by the opportunity, but I want to be clear that, yeah, I'm taking a pay cut here. And so as I see it appropriate, I'll increase what I'm getting paid. And so I think it's really just clarity and openness is the underlying principle with that. And that actually makes the Sunday afternoon dinners a lot easier, especially when you start involving spouses, right? Because, even though, your spouse, it's her parents now too. It's just different when it's like, yeah, these are the people that gave me life and housed me my whole life. And, at least, my wife, it's kind of like, I'm on team Garret always, and Garret always deserves the world. And so, I think just being more open about that, would be, a lot better situation. And I kind of saw that happen with my parents and my grandparents, because it was kind of a loosey-goosey, back of the napkin agreement that a time came where then it started getting a little bit unclear, and both were kind of left in the dark. And so whatever one party did wasn't even fulfilling on what the desires of the other party.
Give me a couple of examples of how you could earn the respect of employees that had been around longer than you had in higher ranking positions before you stepped into your role.
Yeah. So
you spoke about the first there last ago, but I think that's I would think people would find some useful advice from you on, all right, I'm stepping in, I'm the son. My name's on the door.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally this is what my dad decided.
Mm-hmm.
You've been the right hand, or you've been one of the managers for this long. Maybe you were hoping that might have been you.
Yeah.
It's not now. It's me.
Mm-hmm.
Give us something that you feel like you could, like someone else stepping into that situation, they could use that you found beneficial to create a team environment.
So, real quick on the kind of first in, last out principle, I don't think that's always necessary, but I think if you're young and don't know much, I think that's an awesome tool for a certain amount of time. Eventually, I think that needs to kind of transfer. But I do think that can be a very good tool if you're a young guy, especially, and depending on your industry. But we're kind of talking service. I think blue collar, there's kind of a respect that comes with that. So, first thing that comes to my mind with that, is service-based leadership. I really focused, whether it was a driver or a manager, of looking to discover what I could do for them. And invert your typical org chart and recognize that the higher you up are on the org chart, that just means you've got that many more bosses. And so that being kind of the operating system, I found that it was not hard to really gain endearment from employees at every level. And when you're looking for it, you see it everywhere when you start doing that. When, you're walking out in the yard and you see a driver come in and go, hey, why don't you take off? Let me clean out behind your packer. I mean, most people won't know what that means, but when you're driving a front load garbage truck, some trash falls in front of the blade that pushes the trash back throughout the day to compact so you can get all the trash in there. And it's a nasty job where you got to reach in with a hoe and scrape out the garbage that's behind there. There's just opportunities all over from that. And then when you're talking more management, where stuff is more office based and things like that, it's the same principle, but it's just being curious. We had an awesome COO that really knew his stuff and sometimes needed some direction, but he was so open to direction after I spent a long time just going to him looking to learn. and understanding. And it was really easy to get him open to any feedback I had for him after I'd put the time in of understanding what he did, how he thought, why he did what he did. And then it was like, then he turned looking for leadership after he felt understood. I mean, you'll really understand this in the model of communication from Entrecore. Like it really is like just getting over that wall of context and going and being with people and being patient with that. That's not one conversation, but consistently being with the person to understand how they view the world. And then when you do that, they are seeking for guidance if their way of viewing the world is right. And then, one thing I did do that was a little bit different, and I think there's appropriate times, not appropriate times, but I was really intentional, especially with our management team, with opening everything up and being really clear about where we are and anything. My dad ran it where only him and the bookkeeper saw the financial statements. And I saw it like, hey guys, you guys have an impact on this, and this is how we know we're winning or not. So in our management meetings, you all will have the financial statement the week before, and we're all going to discuss this. And so opening up that to them as well, so they had insight to what was actually happening in the business. I felt really good. And then providing, I know we're running low on time, but then providing vision of where I want to take the business. So, I don't think I made that like a clear list, but that's what came to mind of those were the things that I saw as I did. And then there was one big turning point where I really just made a mistake. And then I turned that mistake. I just came to him and said, hey, this is the wrong call I made on this, guys. How are we going to fix it? And that was a real turning point.
Saw a sense of humility from you and just commitment.
Yeah. Just like, hey, this is where we're going. I made this call. It didn't get us close to that. My bad. What are we going to do? And, I really felt, especially from that COO that was 30 years older than me, okay, I can trust you. So, yeah.
Give us an insight on how this chapter of this story ended.
So it was unexpected. Cause like I said, we'd been 2 weeks away from closing, me and my dad, and I thought like, this is my future. This like Larson Waste is going to be the empire that I built. And like my grandkids will have a future in here. This kind of came out of nowhere. It was an offer that, I didn't feel right asking my dad to turn down for my sake. And so
someone came knocking and wanted to buy you guys.
Yep. And there was a lot of family dynamics and different things that were at play that, I think everything happened for the best, even if it was kind of a rough ride. So we went through the buyout took a lot longer than, any of us had anticipated. But we navigated the buyout. We got through that. We navigated negotiating my portion of that, because technically on paper, I didn't have any equity at that point. So, we navigated that, and eventually we finally got to the close. And at that point, the close was a real relief because there was so much that had to get navigated with that. So, which I could spend 3 hours talking about, hey, when you sell your company, let me go through, what to look out for, but it ended.
Who bought you?
Waste Management.
Yeah. I mean, just recently we had the Waste Management open here.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, to go and get acquired by such a large company. Mm-hmm. And you guys were doing something right.
Yeah. And a little bit of that really did feel like we were just up against a giant in a different way. It's like, man, I just haul trash and our business was in great order, like everything was lined up where it should have gone easy, but man, all of a sudden we're dealing with huge corporate lawyers and they buy 50 of these a year. And so it was kind of like, ooh, this is our first one. It was a little bit of a rodeo. But yeah, we navigated it with the employees, did what we believe was doing them right. And, and the close did finally happen.
Yeah. Well, good for you and congrats. I think that something I look forward to and where I'll put you in the category of a hustler, just a mover, I mean, how I remembered it is that I would think that you would be hanging out for a little while, like, oh, great. They just had this giant win and this great exit. And here this guy is looking for what's next. I'm going to keep this momentum rolling. I look forward to hearing what comes next with you. I know some of the talks and your plans, and I won't give anything away yet of what you got up your sleeve, but I'm rooting for you, to keep this momentum going. And I hope that people get to know you better and can go and listen to Trash Talk, which is your podcast, which, there's this goal around helping people that are a younger dynamic in their maybe early 20s, find the courage and the playbook on how to go and start their own business and be an entrepreneur or be a leader and, some of those kind of things. So I appreciate your time. In my mind, it still looks like you came and gave us your time. You flew in directly, just for us, and we'll keep that story that way on our end. But we appreciate you. And if you have anything else that you'd want to leave with anyone before you go, where do people find you?
Find me on Instagram. I think someone runs a TikTok for me. I'm not 100% sure, but in any of the platforms, Garret the Trash Man, 1 R 2 T's with Garret. And come check the stuff out. And then just one last note on if you do have a big win, just remember that you'll rust out before you wear out. So just don't stay very still and keep going.
I love that. Garret, thanks for being with us on A Million Ways to Make $1 Million.